video for the second part of the 2-3 notes. So we're picking up with this word problem. We have the Marcos hitting a golf ball in the air from the third level of the driving range. It's 48 feet high. We have a function that's going to give us the height h in feet of the golf ball in t seconds after it's hit into the air. And we want to know when it hits the ground. So the fact that where he's hitting this golf ball from is 48 feet, that has already been incorporated into the equation, so we don't have to do anything else with this. But you do need to think about what would the height be whenever the golf ball hits the ground. Well, whenever that golf ball comes down and hits the ground, the height is going to be 0. So in this equation up here, I'm going to replace the h of t with a 0. Which gives us 0 equals negative 16t squared plus 32t plus 48. And we need to solve this through factoring, because whatever the solution to this question is going to be when the golf ball hits the ground. Now, it's very, very difficult to factor whenever your leading term is negative. However, there is a greatest common factor we have here. So I can actually divide the first, second, and third terms by a negative 16. Which means I'm going to be factoring that negative 16 out. And this is something you'll be doing in some of the IXLs for our class. So when we take out that negative 16, I'm going to be left with a t squared. Notice it's now positive because I've divided it by that negative. When I take the negative 16 out of the positive 32t, remember when we take it out, we're really dividing. So we're going to be left with a minus 2t. And then when I take it out of the 48, I have a minus 3. When you have a greatest common factor that is a number and does not include a letter, you can basically ignore it. Because I could divide both sides by this negative 16 and it wouldn't affect the outcome of the question. When your greatest common factor is a letter, you do need to keep that there, and you would set that equal to 0 along with any other factors that are in your problem. So continuing on with this, this is going to factor into t minus 3 and t plus 1. And when I solve this, set it equal to 0, I get the times of 3 and negative 1. So one of these answers doesn't quite make sense. Because if I want to know, after he hits the golf ball, when it is going to hit the ground, it doesn't make sense that we would have a negative time. So the t equals negative 1 is not going to be applicable for this real world situation, which means 3 is going to be our solution here. Now this is a quadratic. If you picture, here's the ground here, and we're at this height of 48 feet. Mark is hitting this golf ball up, and then it's coming back down to the ground. So over there is where you're going to get your 3 seconds. But to complete this quadratic, we would be thinking backwards. That's where the negative 1 comes in. So realistically, if we had no context at all, this would have 2 solutions of negative 1 and 3. But because this is a real world problem and time is not going to start before 0 seconds, we only use the 3 in our solution. We are not going to be looking at example 5 today. So now we're on to example 6. We need to get the equation of a parabola that has the x-intercepts of negative 2 and negative 1, and is going to pass through the point negative 3, 20. So if you recall from our opening slide in the last video, factored form looks like this, where p and q are your x-intercepts. A is some number that we need to actually find in order to complete our question. Just like we did with vertex form, we're going to plug in for x and y and p and q, and then I'm going to solve for a. Your x-intercepts, one is going to be p, one is going to be q. They are interchangeable, but I'm going to go ahead and let the negative 2 be the p. The q is going to be, kind of looks like an 8 there, that's a q. The q is negative 1, and then this point over here is going to be my x and y. Now I'm only going to plug in the negative 3 for the x and the 20 for the y in the beginning to solve for the a, and then once I write my solution, just like with vertex form, I'm going to leave x and y as the letters x and y. So we have 20 equals a times -3 minus -2, which will be a plus, and then -3 minus -1, which again will be a plus. So I have -1 and -2. When I multiply those together, I get a +2, so that's going to become 2a. When we divide, we get a is 10. So your equation in factored form with these x-intercepts is going to be y equals 10 times x plus 2 times x plus 1. And we're going to do another example like this so you can see just another practice with this one. So again, I plugged in the a, I plugged in the p, I plugged in the q. Again, these are interchangeable. You can have x plus 1, x plus 2. As long as the appropriate sign goes with the appropriate term, then you're good to go. So this is just an extra example. I don't know that this one is on the written notes, but this is just an extra question so that you can practice plugging in. Again, I'm going to let my -8 be my p, my 2 be my q. 4 and 12 are going to be my x and y respectively to solve for a. So I have 12 equals a times 4 minus -8 times 4. I'm getting ahead of myself there. 4 minus 2. Notice you do use the x value twice. I don't think I really stated that in the last example, but there's 2 x's, so you're going to have 2 of the 4's in the question. So this is 12 and 2. When I multiply those, I get 24. So if 12 is equal to 24a, when I divide by 24, I get that a is 1/2. So my equation is going to be y equals 1/2 times x plus 8 times x minus 2. And there we go. In your textbook, there is a concept summary on page 92, which goes back and reviews some of the key important facts about factored form with quadratics and some of the other topics that we've covered here. So if you want to take a look in your textbook, page 92, that kind of sums up everything for 2-3. So go back and watch this video. Watch the first video on part 1. I also added an additional YouTube video that goes over factoring when a is not equal to 1, in case you're still struggling with that. And reach out to me if you have any questions.